The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
And welcome to the October 11th edition of the Opinionators. I am Larry Deanne, and the Opinionators is Cable 14's premier opinion program based on the partisan opinions of the three mainline political parties as represented by our expert panel. And they are, of course, Ron Corsini, representing the Liberal point of view.
Larry.
Tara Cugnale of the Conservative persuasion.
You call it partisan, I just call it the truth.
And Alex Johnstone telling us all about the NDP perspective on things. Welcome, Alex.
Good afternoon, Larry.
Well, panel, we've got some really hot topics. And Ron, we're going to start with you because, of course, we had our own version of Trudeau-mania last night, or Trudeau-mania 2.0, with Justin coming into town. And it showed that there was support for him, at least from the people who were there. And I think actually you were there. Did his visit strike a chord with the folks in the city and those who attended, Ron? Are you a happier Liberal today because Justin's in the race?
Well, I am, because I feel it's a rebirth of the party. I feel that there's just something happening here, because there were over 500 people in this packed hall at the Sheraton. And there were a lot of people from other political stripes there just observing and saying, what's going on here? Maybe they don't remember Trudeau-mania. I don't, because I was just a little boy then. So I was, but you could feel something in the air. I mean, you have to look at the past leadership of the party, and some of those leaders, they didn't connect with Canadians. This guy connects with Canadians. I like what he says. He's talking about rebuilding. The middle class is the most important part of our community, because the middle class is the one that builds this country and spends money and buys things. So you could feel something in the air. And just by the crowd, I don't think I've been to a Liberal event in Hamilton that had that many people in one spot, and the feeling was electric.
Well, Tara, say what you will, and it's early days, of course, but is your party worried that Justin is going to gain some traction?
I don't think that we're worried in the least. If anything, I think that a Justin Trudeau leadership would ensure another Conservative victory, at least for one more election. I don't think that Justin would take the PM spot on the first round. I think what the Liberals have to understand, though, is that they have, if they're going to choose him, they're going to have to give him more than one shot. We've seen over the past little while, you know, Stéphane Dion, Michael Ignatieff, you've had these one-trick ponies, and they didn't perform, they didn't connect, and then they were dropped by their party. And you need to build something, and especially coming from a third-party position, though. You know what? His father was something else. And unfortunately for Justin, we are comparing him to his father, and it's probably not a very fair thing to do, because that was 30 years ago, and politics and people are different now, so we're expecting something different. So, I mean, I hope that Justin does well for himself and doesn't embarrass himself, but I don't think that we're afraid as a party.
Well, Alex, some people are saying that the NDP would have the most to lose because his home base, of course, is Quebec, and anything he takes away in Quebec would be taken away from your party. What's your perspective?
Well, Larry, I'm actually excited about Justin, or young Trudeau, as he's being called. I think that he's drawing a lot of attention, and I'm always excited when people become interested in politics. That said, Trudeau has an enormous feat in front of him. He has a lot of work to do. Over 2/3 of the Liberal riding associations are defunct, and he really hasn't proven himself other than, swearing in the House. I think he has that under his belt, and going into a fight, a wrestling match. So I think that other than that, what has he really accomplished? And I think that he does have to live up to his father's name. People do expect that. I think, though, that it will, in terms of its impact on the NDP, I think that it could split the vote. That said, I hope that the NDP and Liberals do merge together. That is my personal hope, because I think that's the only way for the left to really come through.
And you know that if Justin does take it, he has, I think, even said yesterday that that's not on the cards for the Liberal Party under his leadership.
Well, and the NDP is saying that as well.
And Peter MacKay said that when about merging.
But Larry, that was very different because that was one party that then split and then came back together. Sure. Whereas the NDP have been their own party for.
But you know what I saw last night was he was engaging young people. There were a lot of young people there, and I think, like you said, he's bringing people back into politics, and I think that that's more important. We just don't want people to have this the apathy that most people think about. Politics and politicians in Canada.
I would have thought that there would be more
but you know what, the
Liberals at the event last night, though.
There were a lot of Liberals,
well, you say 500, the media says about a few hundred, and then
no, there
by
were more
your
than
own
a few
admission,
hundred.
you said that a number of those people weren't. You were going to go. I could have gone.
Well,
there were a
anybody
lot
could
of
have
people.
gone.
There were a lot of people there that weren't Liberals.
I just noticed a couple of NDP people there.
Absolutely.
Well, Mary Long
we're interested.
Mary Long was there, yeah.
But I think that, I think, though, that when we're talking about Quebec in itself, NDP has all kinds of young New Democrats, in their 20s that were elected as MPs in Quebec. And provincially, the Liberals are on the outs in Quebec. So I think that Trudeau still has a lot of work to do. I know that he has alienated a number of different Quebecers in terms of the forced pluralism. Whenever he speaks publicly, he does half of it in English, the other half in French. And I know that Quebecers really don't like that being forced into pluralism.
We're going to have to leave that as the last word.
I mean, it's very young in the campaign.
As the last word. We'll come back to this as the leadership race matures as well.
For the next year.
Alex, this one's for you, and it has to do with provincial politics and a visit, a very unusual visit, because it seldom happens, where Andrea Horwath, the leader of the NDP provincially, came into City Hall in the council chambers and made a policy announcement, or at least suggested some things that need to be done about casinos, and wants the OLG, really, which was a creation of an NDP government, wants it to pause on its renewal of gambling in Ontario, giving communities a chance to sort out what they want to do. What do you think about this? Do we need a pause? Council already has taken a position saying that it's too late for a referendum. They want to do other forms of community input. What's your stand?
Well, isn't it refreshing that we have a provincial leader that truly understands the relationship between the province and municipalities? We have to think of the fact that McGuinty, he's talking down to municipalities, forcing this through. There's a lot of communities that really want to have this discussion, Samarella included. And I think that her leadership and support in this area is well needed. I hope that McGuinty listens.
Tara, what do you think?
Well, I do have to agree that we are being pushed into a decision in terms of casinos. I don't like the idea that we have to decide by the end of this year. That being said, I don't think that the referendum is the way to go. I don't think that this is an issue that can wait till 2014. We need to know what is going on in our own hometown. We have to know what's going on with Flamborough Downs. Is there a chance that we can save that track? And if so, we don't need another casino. So there are lots of things happening here, but I do understand where Andrea is coming from, not just for our city, but for all municipalities. I just don't think that we can afford to wait another year and a half.
I thought Conservatives were in favor.
We wouldn't have two.
We're in favor of waiting, but I don't think all the way till.
Well, I think there has to be some sort of deadline. I mean, you just can't let this thing go on and on and on indefinitely.
But Hamilton likes doing that, right?
I know. We love doing that. We did it with the stadium. It was a whole year. We went around the block, and then we ended up back where we started from. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. But the whole idea of the leader of the NDP party, Andrea, coming in the City Hall chambers, first of all, to me, I thought that was a wrong. It's her ward, but I think that's a nonpartisan. City Hall chamber should be nonpartisan, and coming in there and making this big speech about casinos, and I think there's a lot of fear mongering about casinos. We have one. If you don't want to go, don't go. And this whole idea about, oh, you know, people that can't afford it are going to go. Really? You know, like people that drink shouldn't be drinking.
The entire notion, though,
you know, like I mean, there's only going to be one casino.
We're
I mean, we're not going to have two.
Ron, we're
just moving the casino from there
that we are
into the
still
core.
going to get the tax revenue from somewhere because we desperately, as a
So
municipality,
if we lose
need
that
it.
tax revenue,
And that's
where
where
does
the
that
issue
money come
comes.
from?
And that's why City Council is being forced into a decision before I think that we have enough time to think about it because we're worried about where that money is going to come from.
The bottom line is
not gonna
casinos
happen
are
overnight.
not healthy for communities, and I think
Don't
that
go.
the community needs to have a solid conversation around it. I think the public deserves the right to have this conversation.
So
So then-
been going on. We've had this
So
casino.
No.
It's not
then
something
why
new.
not come out and say we should close casinos?
Yes.
Because we need the
yes.
Party
revenue,
feels
we
that way.
need the money. There are so many
Close 'em.
organizations that get their revenue streams from the money from casinos. So that's why, yes,
And
they
there's
need to be
jobs
open,
in
but do they need to
place
be?
and-
Do they need to be in the downtown core in Hamilton? I'm not talking about other municipalities, but in Hamilton, I don't think it's necessary.
We're not
I
gonna
like
have
where
to.
Cleveland
Community
is.
should
It's gonna be
have the
one.
right to decide what's best for them.
But they did. And Burlington said, no, thank you, and that's fine. We move on our way. We already have one here. And so what they're going to be doing is moving it from Flamborough to the downtown core.
Why though? Why do we need to do that?
Well, I'm going to hold you there because we're going to talk about this again, about implications to Hamilton specifically when I get my chance as well. But let's move to another topic. And Tata, this is for you, and it has to do with the Supreme Court of Canada. We're going to talk about the highest court in the land. And they came out with a ruling around HIV disclosure just this past week, where they essentially said to people who are infected with HIV that they are no longer under the obligation to disclose their status, their health status, to their sexual partners, as long as they have low level of HIV, a low viral load, I think were the words that they used, and they wear a condom. Then you do not have to disclose, and you will not face any criminal charges if somebody else gets infected. Did they get it right?
I was actually floored by this decision, and it was a unanimous decision, 9-0. So I'm wondering what information they have that the general public does not. Yes, there have been many advances in the treatment of HIV, and I think that you can live a long and relatively normal life carrying the disease now, much better than you could in the 80s. But it is still, to me, a life sentence, and I don't know how you could be a little bit infected. Like, you can be a little bit dead, you can be a little bit, I don't get, it's either one or the other. So and at the same time, I also agree that every person has to look after themselves and has to be aware of the relationships they get into and their own body and their own protection. I get that, but at the same time, look at Hank Agiza, a Hamilton case, the first time that someone with HIV was convicted of aggravated assault and of murder for not disclosing to his partners, and I think that was the right way to go. I understand also that people might not want to go get checked out or tested because now they have to tell. It's a very slippery slope. It's a way bigger issue I think that we can discuss in 5 minutes, but I think that they got it wrong.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Tara. I mean, I don't know how you could be a little HIV and you really have to look after yourself and under those situations. Really have to take care of your own body and what you're getting into. I don't know how many people at the heat of the moment would say, oh, by the way, I have to tell you something. I got just a little bit of HIV. You don't mind, do you? We'll just put on this condom and continue. It scares me a little bit.
Well, Larry, I think my personal thoughts on this is that it's a very murky ruling. They never defined what is a low level of HIV. So that's now left up to the public to decide. Is that a CD4 count of 200? What is what is it? And I think that it's I know that the lower courts are certainly going to have a difficult time ruling on this. That said, there's been numerous cases where that have been, thrown out of the courts, where the charge has been lowered to a lower charge, specifically over in Manitoba, because the individual who had unprotected sex without disclosing their HIV status, the disease was not passed over because it was so low level, and that's where the judges are coming from. That said, the law itself is really murky. There certainly needs to be a huge campaign around safe sex, and I personally still would want people to disclose, even if the risk is very minuscule.
Yeah, like you said, I'm
issue.
so pleased that medical science has come such a far way in bringing this disease under control. People aren't dying from it like they used to years ago.
But they still have it. But they still have it.
The transmission is still there.
You can have a baby now without transmitting it. You can do all kinds of things, and
but the issue still is if you do pass it over to another individual, you should be held
I think in terms of the risk, though, there's always a risk every time you get in a car, so, and certainly
but
there's
you're
no
getting
one
into
telling
a car
you.
knowing you're getting into a car. That's the issue. You're doing so willingly, and you understand what's happening when you get into a car.
I think at the end of the day, though, I think what's really important here for the public is that there's always risk with having unprotected sex, and that you need to be having protected sex.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it at that with that public service announcement as well, which is good advice. And we're into the lightning round. And the lightning round, as you know, is an opportunity to talk only one comment this time. That's why it's called the lightning round, to talk about very important issues of the day. And we're going to shift it around this time, beginning the very first one with you, Ron. And it has to do with the deficit-fighting McGuinty government again. And this time, they're going after emergency room doctors, threatening some audits to make sure that indeed people are seeing who they say they see, rather than the abuse of overbilling. Is this warranted, Ron, or is this another attack that is going too far?
Why not? I mean, people get audited all the time. I've been audited. It's just a general checkup, and I think that the government has to look out for the public purse. So if they're not doing anything wrong, then fine. Then there's nothing happening. But I don't see anything wrong with it.
Well, I do think that it's more politically motivated. Emergency room doctors, there's a hope that they're all going to go towards a salary as opposed to a charge by person basis, and perhaps this is where the audits are coming from. I did not know that there was such great overbilling going on. I don't think there is, but that's what it would suggest if you're targeting one specific group of people. So I do think it's unfair.
Alex?
This is politics, and the Liberals right now, they're wanting to do all kinds of cuts across the system to demonstrate to Ontario public that they're, tackling the deficit. At the end of the day, the Liberals were able to balance the budget for 3 years in a row prior to 2008 recession, and since then, none of the public wages have gone up. So I'm not sure why they're not able to balance the budget now. Certainly, the recession, we bailed out a lot of companies, we bailed out the banks.
Time.
Okay.
All right. But you've got the word on this one, Alex. And it has to do with the federal government, also in terms of cuts. And what they're doing at the federal level is that they're canceling contracts for part-time chaplains in our federal prisons. And which means that the chaplains who are there full-time are going to be delivering their services to all the inmates. Part of the issue, though, the reality is that those chaplains are overwhelmingly Christian. The part-timers are of other faiths. What do you make of that?
Well, my first reaction is that we fund chaplains. I didn't know that we paid for them in the first place. And I personally, and this is a personal comment, I don't think that we should be paying for any of them. It really needs to come from, if you're part of a religious sect, you need to come into the prisons on your own time and make those connections. That said, I think that there needs to be a little bit of fairness here. It shouldn't be all Christians. I think that shows a little bit of prejudiceness from Taos in Harper.
Okay.
Wow, I agree with you, Alex. We shouldn't be funding chaplains. I think that it also should be voluntary, and I think that's where we're eventually going to move to. They got rid of all the part-time chaplains. The full-time are predominantly Christian, but not all. Other people are welcome to come into the prison system and volunteer their time and help out with prisoners that seek something, but I do think that it should be on a voluntary basis.
So 2 of the 3 want to cut all chaplains. What about you, Ron?
No, I think it's important that they're there, but the government is saying that it's just Christians in penitentiary? I mean, we got other
overwhelmingly, not too. Just, but overwhelmingly.
Oh, well, overwhelmingly, yeah, but I mean, because most people are Christians, but there are other denominations in there too, so I'm sure that if a rabbi wants to go and visit their friend, but a lot of friends of mine that came out of jail, they've come out and they found the Bible. They've rediscovered themselves.
Do you have a lot of friends coming out of jail?
Well, a few.
Right, well, okay, that was an interesting little tidbit that was dropped, but that's a different topic.
We'll talk
don't
about
tell
that
anybody.
later.
Yeah, we won't tell. This
Don't
is
tell anyone.
just among
Just
us. Yeah.
Okay.
This one's for you, Ron, and it has to do with the UN. And the United Nations has singled out Canada, specifically the federal government is feeling the heat over this, with regards to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, indicating that the results show that the government's tough on crime agenda is excessively punitive, and that's the word that they use in their report, and a step backward for Canada's child rights record. Now, the Conservatives have worn this as a badge of honor that they're being tough on crime, but is this bouncing back on them?
In a way, it is bouncing back on them. But you know what? The UN has been down our backs because we've been speaking the truth to them and saying, look, you got a lot of other problems. I mean, Canada is doing its part in combating child poverty and the whole bit. We're doing something about it. What is the UN doing about Syria and all the other atrocities all over the world? Why don't they point the finger at them?
Tara.
Well, it's interesting that this came about a week after John Baird pretty much gave the UN the one-fingered salute at their general meeting. Clearly, they are not living up to the mandate of what the UN is supposed to be doing. Ron, I agree with you. There are many other places in the world that desperately need the UN and the world's attention. And I don't think that this is something that Canada is really even going to bat an eyelash at.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, we just had the case of the awful case of a young 14-year-old Pakistani girl being shot in the face because she wanted to promote education for young women. Surely the UN is not equating the two. What's your take on this?
Well, I have to disagree with Tara. I think that it was coincidence when the timing of this report came out, and certainly it was a report that takes months to prepare. The UN's responsibility is to look at all countries, and they do assessments from from year to year of all of the countries, Canada included, and it's been slapped on the wrist numerous times for different policies. And I have to agree in terms of if you look at youth crime, and I've done a lot of work with gang prevention activities in Vancouver where it's needed, youth crime is very different from adult crime.
Right,
it's done more out of passion and not with conscience.
All right, Alex, you went a little over, but that's fine. You made your point. But we're going to start with you with the last one. It has to do with the gas plant cancellation. We might be tired of it, but there's a new report that says that it's not going to cost $40 million. It might cost as high as $700 million to relocate. Is this going to hurt the government even more, or is McGuinty just entrenched in weathering this out?
I think McGuinty is entrenched on trying to weather this out. I think that, of course, it's going to hurt them. I just keep on hearing different numbers.
Yeah.
This is what the NDP and Conservatives were going on about it. We want the truth. We keep getting different reports, different money figures. When is the truth going to come out, Ron?
Ron, tell the truth.
I will. The truth will come out. And you know what? And I don't know whether the media is partly to blame for it blowing this out of proportion. One day it's 40 million, next day it's 7 million. And I don't, you know what? This is going to just settle down, and I believe the public will tend to forget about it because that's what they do.
McGuinty hopes.
And you know what? And they follow the will of the people. So that's.
Goodness.
And the will of the people
did not want it.
Let's give Tara a chance.
They could have followed the will of the people the entire time that the cities of Oakville and Mississauga were begging the government not to place the plants there in the first place. They never wanted them there. The Liberals didn't listen to them then. They only listened to them when their seats were at risk, and $700 million is a heck of a price to pay for 2 Liberal seats.
All right, we'll leave it at that, and now it's my turn. And I want to come back to a topic that we've already started talking about, but make it very specific to Hamilton. And I just want to pose these 3 questions. That's the referendum or the polling that's being done around casinos. Referendum specifically. And I want to ask these 3 questions. The first one is this. What exactly is Hamilton supposed to do if this law passes that communities are supposed to vote on casinos? We already have a casino. So are we supposed to vote on relocating the casino to a different part of the city? And if that's the case, is that a referendum issue? Secondly, what if the vote is, let's say, 53% to 47%? Is that a mandate to do anything when it's split down the middle, as I suspect this might be? And how do we replace the lost millions, in some cases estimated to be up to $9 million with a relocated casino? What programs do we cut if we no longer have this money? And we're going to start with you, Alex.
Well, Larry, I think that communities do need to be having these votes. I think your questions are kind of ahead of the game at this point. It's a lot of what ifs. I think that we need to start with consulting our communities and then going from there. If a community is not wanting to have the casino there, then you know, as McGuinty is on his bandwagon of listening to the people and doing what they want and shutting down power plants, I'm sure he would be more than willing to do the same for casinos.
Ron?
So we already have a casino in the city. We're just talking about relocating the casino. Do we need a referendum to relocate a casino? I think not. I think that decision can be made by council. As far as the lost revenue of not having a casino, we may have nothing, and the OLG will say, thank you very much, we're going to look at some other municipality. I don't know where that millions of dollars is going to come from, and there will be cuts to a lot of the services that the city offers now. Those cuts, they're going to have to make up those dollars, and it's going to come out of the taxpayer.
Very good. Tara.
You know, when we're talking about referendums, especially when attached to a municipal election, really how many voices are you going to hear? What is it normally? 20-25% of the people actually come out to vote. Will the referendum encourage more people to vote, or will people just not care it the same way? So I don't think that you're going to get a majority of the people's voice during a referendum. Number 2, yes, Ron, I think that I do like having casino money, but it's just the same as any sin tax, red light district. Keep it out of my downtown, keep it out of my way, but I'll take the money. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, this is going to evolve, and we'll be talking about this as well. So thank you very much, panel. And thank you for watching, viewers. This has been the Opinionators for October the 11th. We're going to be back October the 18th. And that's my wife's birthday, as well as the late Pierre Trudeau's birthday, by the way. See you then. Thank you.